Welcome to our fourth virtual reading lesson. Today we are going to start reading chapter 7 of the Hunger Games. So if you've not read up to here, then make sure you pause and read up to chapter 7 so that you can read with us today. Okay, so last time we began reading chapter 5 and I have some quick quiz questions on chapter 5 and chapter 6 which you should be able to answer. So our first question is, why does Katniss's outfit get so much attention at the opening ceremony? And you can find the answer to that on page 65. The second question is, where do Peeta and Katniss go to speak privately? The answer to that can be found on page 76. What is an Avox? The answer to that on page 73. And which gadget would you most like on page 71? So you will have lots of different answers for that one. Okay, and I want a quote. So I'd like the answer to that to be in quote form. So, can you please pause now and answer these questions? Hopefully you can see them all. And make sure that you have paper, you have the online dictionary up for you to clarify words, you have your ruler, and you have your pen and highlighter so that you're prepared for today's reading. Okay, so pause there and answer these questions. Okay, so the answer to these questions I have here. So why does Katniss' outfit get so much attention at the opening ceremony? So the quote I got for that was because he sets their capes on fire. So Cinna, her stylist, decides that because she's from District 12, the best thing is to use an idea that relates to that district and makes them memorable. So he sets her and Peeta on fire as they go out into the opening ceremony to catch everyone's attention. And secondly, where do Peeta and Katniss go to speak privately? Here Peeta says to Katniss, have you been on the roof yet? So they go up to the top of the training centre where they think they won't be spied on by the Capitol and the people who are controlling them in Panem. So they go to the top of the roof. Number 3, what is an Avox? So an Avox is someone who committed a crime. They cut her tongue so she can't speak. So if you remember, Katniss recognised a girl who was serving her at dinner at the training centre, and the girl got really worried when Katniss said, "Don't I know you?" And then they explained that she's an Avox, so she'd committed a crime against the state. Maybe she'd been saying things which weren't positive about it, so they cut her tongue out. But remember, Katniss was really traumatised by that because she remembers seeing that girl, and the girl asked her for help before she was captured by the Capitol. So that's an Avox. And then the final question was, which gadget would you be most interested in? So I found that page. It's on page 71. And I just was going to share my thoughts. So I have put here, I've underlined what I found most interesting. So it was where it says, I merely place my hand on a box that sends a current through my scalp, untangling, parting and drying my hair almost instantly. It floats down around my shoulders in a glossy curtain. So I thought this sounds wonderful, a box that you simply press and it sorts your hair out for you and makes it look glossy instantly. You might also perhaps have thought about or underlined this food delivery service that you need only whisper a type of food from a gigantic menu into a mouthpiece and it appears hot and steamy before you in less than a minute, which again sounds great. You can just get food ordered to you at any time. So the training centre that Katniss is now living in sounds great compared to where she lived before. Okay, so we're going to start reading from chapter 7 today. I'm just going to quickly summarise chapter 5 and 6. So Katniss and Peeta are at the training centre getting ready for the Hunger Games. Haymitch is starting to believe in them and staying relatively sober to help them. And we also have Katniss experiencing all these new things. We know that they were very popular at the opening ceremony because of their amazing outfit. We know that Katniss is starting to actually believe in herself, that she might have a chance. And we're not really sure about Peeta. Is he playing a game or is he actually just really kind? So that happened. And then we had this incident with the Avox where Katniss feels this immense guilt for not helping her. Okay, so we're going to start reading today. Remember, get your kit ready, get ready to clarify any words. My slumbers are filled with disturbing dreams. So as you can see here, I've wanted to clarify this word slumbers, and I know that slumber means sleep because I've heard of that American phrase slumber party. So I thought about a word I could replace it with, and I'm just going to check if that works. So my sleep are filled with disturbing dreams. Yeah, so I know what it means now. The face of the red-headed girl, she's the Avox that is haunting Katniss, intertwines with gory images from earlier Hunger Games, with my mother withdrawn and unreachable, with Prim emaciated and terrified. I bolt up, screaming for my father to run as the mine explodes into a million deadly bits of light. Okay, so I've summarised this first paragraph into being a nightmare. So she's clearly traumatised in her sleep. She must be so anxious, so worried. And then I used the online dictionary to clarify this word emaciated. So if you're emaciated, it's when you look very starved and skinny, like you haven't eaten. That's one of Katniss's biggest fears if she's not there to provide for Prim, her little sister. Dawn is breaking through the windows. The capital has a misty, haunted air. My head aches and I must have bitten into the side of my cheek in the night. My tongue probes the ragged flesh and I taste blood. Slowly I drag myself out of bed and into the shower. I arbitrarily punch buttons on the control board and end up hopping from foot to foot as alternating jets of icy cold and steaming hot water assault me. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight this word arbitrarily. It was actually really tricky to say, so perhaps you could practice saying that. I want you to find out what arbitrarily means using your online dictionary. Okay, so that means a random choice, so without any system. Okay, so she's just randomly pressing buttons. She doesn't really know how all these gadgets work. Then I'm deluged in lemony foam that I have to scrape off with a heavy bristle brush. Oh well, at least my blood is flowing. When I'm dried and moisturised with lotion, I found an outfit has been left for me at the front of the closet. So as we said, this is an American text, so closet means wardrobe in English. You might have heard these phrases of TV shows and films. Tight black pants, again pants in English, British English is trousers. A long sleeved burgundy tunic and leather shoes. I put my hair in a single braid down my back. This is the first time since the morning of the reaping that I resemble myself. No fancy hair and clothes, no flaming capes, just me, looking like I could be headed for the woods. It calms me. Haymitch didn't give us an exact time to meet for breakfast, and no one has contacted me this morning, but I'm hungry, so I head down to the dining room, hoping there will be food. I'm not disappointed. Because it's really quite ironic there that she's constantly getting food now that she can have, when before she was always struggling to find food. While the table is empty, a long board off to the side has been laid with at least 20 dishes. A young man, an Avox, stands at attention by the spread. When I ask if I can serve myself, he nods assent. I load a plate with eggs, sausages, batter cakes covered in thick orange preserves, slices of pale purple melon. As I gorge myself, okay, so gorge myself, I'm not quite sure what gorge means, but I'm not going to use the online dictionary at this stage. I'm going to try and see what words I can replace it with. So I know she likes the food. I know that she's hungry and she wants to gain some pounds before the games to give her an advantage. So I think maybe she means stuff myself. As I stuff myself, that makes sense. So I'm just going to write down a word I could replace it. That's another way you can clarify. I watch the sunrise over the capital. I have a second plate of hot grains smothered in beef stew. Finally, I fill a plate with rolls and sit at the table, breaking oil bits and dipping them into hot chocolate, the way Peter did on the train. My mind wanders to my mother and Prim. They must be up. My mother getting their breakfast of mush, Prim milking her goat before school. Just 2 mornings ago I was home. Can that be right? Yes. Just 2. So this is a language technique here that Katniss is doing to show her thoughts. So I'm just going to see if you know what this one is. So I've given you the initials of the 2 words that describe this technique. Yep, so hopefully you got that. It's a rhetorical question. And this is done so that we get an insight into Katniss's mind. I'm going to put K for short. And how empty the house feels, even from a distance. What did they say last night about my fiery debut at the games? Did it give them hope, or simply add to their terror when they saw the reality of 24 tributes circled together, knowing only one could live? I'm just going to ask a question here. I want you to write down the answer. Can you remember why the capital and the country of Panem do the Hunger Games every year? Why do they only want one of these 24 people to live? So have a go at writing down an answer. Okay, so yeah, it's sort of a punishment for the rebellion of District 13. To remind people that rebellion will lead to death and that you should always follow the control of the state. So it's a form of control. And that's why this is, if you remember the genre, it's a dystopian novel, which is a novel that is about a nightmare world, often with the state controlling you. So that means the government. So it's a form of control, the Hunger Games. Haymitch and Peter come in, bid me good morning, fill their plates. It makes me irritated that Peter is wearing exactly the same outfit I am. I need to say something to Cinna. This twins act is going to blow up in our faces once the games begin. Surely they must know this. Then I remember Haymitch telling me to do exactly what the stylists tell me to do. If it was anyone but Cinna, I might be tempted to ignore him. But after last night's triumph, I don't have a lot of room to criticise his choices. I'm nervous about the training. There will be 3 days in which all the tributes practice together. On the last afternoon, we'll each get a chance to perform in private before the game makers. The thought of meeting the other tributes face to face makes me queasy. So again, I'm going to clarify this word queasy. So if you feel queasy, you might have heard this one before. Try and get a better sign. So it was when you feel sick, nervous. I turn the roll I've just taken from the basket over and over in my hands, but my appetite is gone. When Haymitch has finished several platters of stew, he pushes back his plate with a sigh. He takes a flask from his pocket and takes a long pull on it and leans his elbows on the table. So let's get down to business. Training. First off, if you like, I'll coach you separately. Decide now. Okay, so we've got dialogue here, which means speech. And it gives us more insight into what type of character Haymitch is. So he's very direct, he's very straightforward, and he's quite forceful. There's lots of punctuation in this. Training, a one-word sentence. First off, if you like. So there's lots of commas and punctuation which make you pause to show that directness and forceful character Haymitch has. Why would you coach us separately, I ask. Say if you had a secret skill you might not want the other to know about, says Haymitch. I exchange a look with Peter. I don't have any secret skills, he says, and I already know what yours is, right? I mean, I've eaten enough of your squirrels. I never thought about Peter eating the squirrels I shot. Somehow, I always pictured the baker quietly going off and frying them up for himself. Not out of greed, but because town families usually eat expensive butcher meat. Beef and chicken and horse. You can coach us together, I tell Haymitch. Peter nods. All right, so give me some idea of what you can do, says Haymitch. I can't do anything, says Peter, unless you count baking bread. Sorry, I don't. Katniss, I already know you're handy with a knife, says Haymitch. Not really, but I can hunt, I say, with a bow and arrow. And you're good? asked Hamish. I have to think about it. I've been putting food on the table for 4 years. That's no small task. I'm not as good as my father was, but he'd had more practice. I've better aim than Gale, but I've had more practice. He's a genius with traps and snares. I'm all right, I say. She's excellent, says Peter. My father buys her squirrels. He always comments on how the arrows never pierce the body. She hits everyone in the eye. It's the same with the rabbits she sells the butcher. She can even bring down deer. The assessment of my skills from Peter takes me totally by surprise. First, that he ever noticed. Second, that he's talking me up. What are you doing? I asked him suspiciously. So what I did there was I read ahead and I looked for the direction for the speech. So this adverb suspiciously. And when you're reading out loud, that's really important to do because it tells you how to read the dialogue here. So, what are you doing? So you try and put a suspicious tone in when you say it. What are you doing? If he's going to help you, he has to know what you're capable of. Don't underrate yourself, says Peter. I don't know why, but this rubs me the wrong way. What about you? I've seen you in the market. You can lift 100-pound bags of flour, I snap at him. Tell him that. That's not nothing. So what sort of attitude does Katniss show? What would you describe her attitude as? So I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to write down a few adjectives there. So I think she's fiery. I think she's brave. I think she's quite defensive. She's very quick. Perhaps she's so used to surviving on her own, looking after her sister and mum. Yes, and I'm sure the arena will be full of bags of flour for me to chuck at people. It's not like being able to use a weapon. You know it isn't, he shoots back. He can wrestle, I tell Hamish. He came in second in our school competition last year, only after his brother. What use is that? How many times have you seen someone wrestle someone to death, says Peter in disgust. There's always hand-to-hand combat. All you need is to come up with a knife, and you'll at least stand a chance. If I get jumped, I'm dead. I can hear my voice rising in anger. But you won't. You'll be living up in some tree eating war squirrels and picking off people with arrows. You know what my mother said to me when she came to say goodbye, as if to cheer me up? She says maybe District 12 will finally have a winner. Then I realised she didn't mean me, she meant you, burst out Peter. So we already know that his mum was quite cruel because Katniss saw her hit Peter earlier on in the novel. So I'm just going to put about their cruel mother. So both Peter and Katniss have in common issues with their mum, don't they? Oh, she meant you, I say with a wave of dismissal. She said, she's a survivor, that one, says Peter. That pulls me up short. Did his mother really say that about me? Did she rate me over her son? I see the pain in Peter's eyes and I know he isn't lying. Suddenly, I'm behind the bakery and I can feel the chill of the rain running down my back, the hollowness in my belly. I sound 11 years old when I speak, but only because someone helped me. Okay, so what is Katniss having here when she says, suddenly I'm behind the bakery and I can feel the chill of rain running down my back? What language technique is that? So yeah, she's having a flashback to the experience she had with Peter when he's showing kindness and she witnessed his mum. Peter's eyes flicker down to the roll in my hands and I know he remembers that day too. But he just shrugs. People will help you in the arena. They'll be tripping over each other to sponsor you. No more than you, I say. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. So at this stage of chapter 7, Peter and Katniss are showing their competition. They're starting to argue. Is that good or bad? Is that what all the tributes will be doing? Okay, so for next week, for our 5th reading lesson, I need you to read to the end of chapter 8. So next time, you need to be ready to read from the beginning of chapter 9. So homework is to complete chapter 7 and 8. Okay, so remember, clarify those words, write down any questions, and at the end, as well as completing chapter 7a, it would be great if you could do a half-page summary. So like I did today, summarising chapter 5 and 6, write a half-page summary. You can do that using bullet points or a mind map, or you can write a paragraph. It's up to you, whatever works for you. So summarise what you've read in chapter 7, 8. Okay, thank you, and I'll be back next week ready to read from chapter 9.